I have a brother. His name is Daniel. And for 31 years of my life, I thought I knew everything about him. I was wrong. What I found that Tuesday afternoon in March completely shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. And honestly, it still does. Let me take you back a little, because to understand why this hit me so hard, you need to understand who Daniel is, or at least who I thought he was. Daniel is 3 years older than me. Growing up, he was the golden child in our house, the responsible one, the reliable one. Mom always said, "Your brother has his head on straight." And she wasn't wrong, at least on the surface. He graduated with honors, got a steady job in finance, married his college sweetheart Sarah at 28. They bought a house in the suburbs, had a dog named Biscuit, posted photos at brunch every Sunday. He was the definition of a guy who had it all figured out. And me? I was the messier one, the one who switched careers twice, who dated the wrong people, who called Daniel at 11 at night when I needed advice. He was my anchor, my compass, the person in my life I trusted without question. That's what makes this so hard to talk about even now. It was a Tuesday. I know it was a Tuesday because I had the day off, which almost never happens. I'd been doing some freelance work from home and I needed to drop something off at a print shop across town, near Daniel's office actually. I figured, hey, I'll surprise him, maybe grab lunch. That's the kind of relationship we had. Casual, easy, no need to call ahead. I parked outside his building and texted him. No response. That wasn't unusual, he was in meetings a lot. So I sat in my car and scrolled my phone, thinking he'd come down in a few minutes. That's when I saw him. Daniel walked out of the building's side exit, but he wasn't alone. There was a woman next to him. Not Sarah, someone I'd never seen before. She was laughing at something he said, and he had his hand on the small of her back in this way that was so familiar, so comfortable, like they'd done it 1,000 times. I told myself, okay, it's a colleague, a friend, don't jump to conclusions. And then he leaned down and kissed her on the forehead. I froze. My brain just stopped, like it refused to process what my eyes were seeing. They walked to his car, the one I'd ridden in 100 times, and she got into the passenger seat and they drove away. And I just sat there, in my parked car, completely still, with my phone in my lap and this lunch I had been planning completely forgotten. I didn't call him. I didn't call anyone. I drove home in this strange fog where I kept replaying what I saw, trying to find any other explanation. Maybe it was someone from work. Maybe she was going through something and he was being supportive. Maybe I misread the whole thing. But that kiss? That wasn't a friendship kiss. That wasn't a colleague kiss. I've seen enough of those to know the difference. I spent the rest of that afternoon in a spiral. My mind kept throwing questions at me, one after another. How long? Who was she? Does Sarah know? Is this just who Daniel actually is? That last one scared me the most, because I started thinking about the times he'd been unavailable, the weekend trips for work conferences, the phone calls he'd step away to take. I'd never thought twice about any of it. Why would I? This was Daniel, my steady, responsible, golden child brother. I almost called Mom. I picked up my phone 3 separate times and put it back down. Because what was I even going to say? I needed more. I needed to understand what I was actually dealing with before I blew up anyone's life, including my own. Here's where I'm going to admit something that feels a little embarrassing. But also, I don't regret it. Not even slightly. I started looking. Not in a stalker way, more like I started paying attention to things I'd always overlooked. First, I looked at his social media. Daniel's Instagram was locked tight. He'd always been private online, which I never questioned. But I noticed a tagged photo from about 6 months before, posted by someone from his gym. And in the background, barely visible, Daniel was there, with that same woman. And she was holding something. She was holding a baby. My chest went cold. I stared at that photo for probably 10 minutes, zooming in, convincing myself I was wrong. But I wasn't wrong. It was clearly her, and it was clearly a baby young enough that the timing didn't add up with anything I knew about his life of Sarah. I found her profile. It took me a while, but I found it. And there, on a semi-public account, were pictures. Pictures of her life. Pictures of a little boy who looked about 2 years old. And in some of them, not all, but some, Daniel was there, smiling, looking like a father. His name was in a caption of one photo, the kid's name, a name I'd never heard in my life. I sat on the floor of my kitchen and cried. Not because I was sad, I was, but because I was so disoriented, like the floor I was standing on had turned out to be cardboard. Daniel had a child, a 2-year-old child that none of us knew about. He had an entire other life happening in parallel to the one we all thought we were part of. I didn't go to Mom. I didn't go to Sarah. That was the hardest decision I've ever made. And looking back, I'm still not sure it was the right one. But at the time, I felt like I owed Daniel one conversation before I did anything else, one chance to explain himself. I called him that evening and asked if he could come by. He heard something in my voice, I think, because he came right away. No questions. When he walked in, I didn't even let him sit down. I just said, "Who is she?" The look on his face. I will never forget that look for as long as I live. It was the look of a man watching a building fall, like something he'd been holding up for years just gave out in a single second. He didn't deny it. That almost made it worse. He sat down. I hadn't even offered him a seat. He just sat, and he put his head in his hands, and for a long moment, neither of us said anything. Then he said, "How much do you know?" I told him. All of it. The woman, the child, the name I'd seen in a caption. He exhaled. This long, slow exhale like he'd been holding his breath for 2 years. And then he told me everything. Her name was Mia. They'd met 3 years ago through mutual friends. He said it wasn't supposed to happen, which is something I've heard a lot of people say about things that very much did happen. She got pregnant. He panicked. He told Mia he would handle it. He told Sarah nothing. And then he just kept going, kept pretending, kept showing up to Sunday brunch and family dinners and being the guy who had it all figured out, while somewhere across town, a woman was raising a child alone and his wife had no idea. I asked him how. How did he do it? How did he look at Sarah every morning and not break? He said he didn't know. He said he told himself so many times he was going to come clean, and then he just didn't. Every time he was about to say something, something else came up. A holiday, an anniversary, work stress. There was always a reason to wait one more week. I asked about the little boy, his son. He said his name was Eli. He said he loved him. And the way he said it, quietly, like it was the one real thing in a room full of fake walls, I believed him. That was almost worse than the lying, because it meant this wasn't just a mistake he was running from. It was a whole life he had chosen, and then chosen to hide. After he left my apartment that night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, and I thought about everyone involved in this situation. Sarah, she was my sister-in-law. We weren't incredibly close, but she was good. She was kind. She had been faithful and trusting for years, building a life with a man who was apparently living a completely different version of that life somewhere else. Mia, a woman raising a child alone, depending on a man who hadn't told his family she existed. What was that like for her? Did she even know he was keeping her a secret? Eli, a 2-year-old kid who had no idea what was happening in the adult world around him, an innocent in all of this. My parents. My mom who called Daniel her proudest achievement. My dad who thought the sun rose and set with his oldest son. What would this do to them? And me. Where did I fit in any of this? I didn't ask to know. I'd just been driving to surprise my brother for lunch. Daniel called me the next morning and begged me not to say anything. He said he needed time. He said he was going to figure it out. He said he loved me and trusted me and needed me on his side. That word, side. Like this was a game with teams. Like keeping a secret this size from the people who loved him was something I could be neutral about. I told him I needed time too, that I couldn't make promises I didn't know if I could keep. He went quiet. Then he said, "I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I spent 3 weeks in absolute agony. I talked to no one. I smiled at family dinners. I watched Sarah hug Daniel hello and felt my stomach turn inside out. And then it stopped being my secret to keep. because Mia found Sarah. I don't know how. I've never gotten the full story, and honestly, I'm not sure I want to. What I know is that on a Saturday afternoon, Sarah called me, and the first thing I heard was crying. The kind of crying that sounds like it's coming from somewhere very deep and very broken. She said, "Did you know?" I told her the truth. I told her I'd found out 3 weeks ago. I told her I'd confronted Daniel. I told her he was trying to find a way to come clean on his own. I don't know if that made it better or worse. I suspect worse. She hung up. She didn't yell. She just hung up. Daniel and Sarah separated 4 months later. My parents found out everything. There were meals that ended in silence, and holidays that didn't happen, and a version of my family that I don't think will ever fully come back together. And Mia and Eli? Last I heard, Daniel is involved. He's trying. He sees Eli regularly. I don't know what that looks like exactly, and I haven't asked because every time his name comes up, I still feel the ghost of that ordinary Tuesday when I thought I was going to get lunch and instead got my whole world rearranged. People ask me sometimes how I feel about Daniel now. It's a complicated answer. I love him. He is still my brother, and that doesn't just switch off. But something shifted in the way I see him. There's a version of Daniel I knew for 30 years, and I don't know if that version was ever fully real. What I've thought about a lot, though, is this. Secrets this size don't stay secrets. They find ways out. Through photos in the background of someone else's Instagram, through a woman who gets tired of being a secret, through a sister showing up for a Tuesday lunch she never even got to have. People build these double lives and they convince themselves they can hold them together forever. And they can't. No one can. Because the truth doesn't need your permission to surface. It just does. And the people standing near it when it breaks, we carry it too, whether we ask to or not. I never got that lunch, by the way. I still think about that sometimes. The most ordinary errand of my life, and look where it led. If this story hit you somewhere real, drop a comment below. Tell me what you would have done. Would you have confronted him? Would you have told Sarah right away? I genuinely want to know. Like this video if you made it to the end, and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Trust me, they only get more intense from here.